Broadcasting. We're on.
Hi, welcome to Truphone. So it's nice to have to see quite a lot of people back again and some new people. So we've done, this is the fifth talk, maybe the sixth talk actually. We did the first one in the series. Luckily you don't have to hear all of them, and not this evening. I should say that if we get a fire alarm, then essentially you all need to follow me and we'll go out the door, turn left and go downstairs. There are two types of fire alarm. There's one that says go now, which means someone has accidentally tripped the fire alarm on this floor. And there's one that says there might be a problem somewhere, which means that someone has accidentally tripped the fire alarm on all the other floors. Either way, you just follow me. Does anyone have a problem with walking down 21 flights of stairs? And then they can go in the lift with me. Yes, 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 physical problem. In which case, there's a couple of elevators as well. And obviously, if you drink too much or have any things, we'll try to look after you. So that's the kind of health and safety bit. And so, sort of the message from the sponsor. You all probably know what does. So we make a mobile phone product that works in many countries at the same time. So you can have a SIM in your phone, and it works in London, and it works in New York, and it works in Germany, and you can have a telephone number in all of those different places, and therefore you can be home in more than one country. So therefore, most of our customers are banks. We can look out and see most of our customers through the window, and they have the advantage that they get a number, New York, London, New York number, and they are home in both places. Customers, we can take the countries at the same time, and also if they go to New York and ask for a taxi, the taxi will phone them back and say, I'm on my way to you, whereas they would understand an English number. So two big advantages. And it's an all IP network, so we do cool stuff on it, including recording people's mobile phone calls, which we do for banks. We don't do two things. So that's what Truphone does. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, James. Yeah. So, thank you. My name is Lloyd Davis. I run a thing called the Truphone Club, which is a Friday morning coffee morning for geeks that's been running for the last 8 years, century, yes. Feels like a century sometimes. Every Friday morning we're at the National Theatre. You come along and have a cup of coffee with us and share some bacon or whatever you fancy. And we talk in general about technological advances and our social capacity for dealing with that advance. That's the kind of area we're in. So when we started in 2007, 2008, we were talking a lot about social media, and people would come in order to find out about Twitter. They would come and they'd go away tweeting, "I've just joined Twitter. It's amazing."
It's all your fault.
Yeah, and that was our fault. Yes. Now we're more into, well, we've moved through all sorts of things, but very interested in the future of work and creative collaboration and different ways of working with each other. We've had this series of events focusing on the future of work, but in the context of a range of different technologies. So we looked at artificial intelligence, we've looked at blockchain technology, we've looked at drones, robots, and the Internet of Things last week, and this week we're going to look at virtual and augmented reality. The format is basically, I will stop talking in a minute and hand it over to Ava. Ava Pascoe is a legend in London digital life. I'll let you introduce yourself properly in a minute. But we'll have a talk from Ava, and then we will go into an open space, which means we will have a discussion. We'll start off in a circle and we'll go from there. During that time, Simon here has got an Oculus headset and some stuff on it that people can play with, so we can do some demo stuff as well all the way through. So there will be a chance for everybody to strap this thing to their face and see what we're really talking about. But first, please welcome Ava.
Thank you very much. Great to see you. Thank you very much for the invitation. So we will run the demos alongside because it's not a spectator sport. It's one-to-one. So there's no point me showing it. You just come and hang out with Simon, and you will find a few nice demos relevant to work for today. So what I wanted to talk about today is just really bring you up to date with what's happening in virtual things in retail, which is my area. It's moving quite fast, but it's been moving a long way since 1938. So the first guy who came up with the concept of recognizing that the virtual reality is pretty much as valuable as the physical reality was a French guy, Antoine Artaud. He actually didn't end up very well, died in lunatic asylum, so I think this is obviously something that we're desperately trying to avoid. But he was interested in theater, and he noticed that people get transformed into a different reality just by watching a good play. And we know that the best people can create theater from a chair and a brush and transform us to different worlds. So I think human capacity for moving to virtuality has always been there. We just never quite verbalized and never quite had the tools to achieve it on a daily basis. So he started, and then another mad guy, Jaron Lanier, has brought it into the kind of modernity about 1984, and he came up with the whole concept of using virtual reality for gaming. So his early adventures were with a haptic glove, so he came up with the concept of haptics, where the glove is the interface and your kind of entry to virtuality. That didn't go very well because obviously he was so ahead of his time and the ecosystem wasn't ready. So the company went up in massive bankruptcy, with really affecting a lot of people in a really odd way because they never gave up. They kept going. And they kept going, and they ended up with coming to my cyber cafe, which I started with some amazing people back in 1994. Which was sort of a little bit of virtual and physical. So it was a physical cafe with great coffee. You know, we pretty much brought cappuccino to London. So I should have really gone into coffee business rather than computers. That was one of the business plan that wasn't quite right. So we were 5 years ahead of Starbucks, and we lived on the coffee because it cost you 0.5p to make it, and we were selling it for $2.50. So that fed our lap of computers, but it was the first environment where if you look at how big and horrible the computers were, but we loved them. So did everybody else. They were tripping over cables, and the whole thing was complete health drama. But it was the first time where you can see people sitting in a public space, in an open space, emerged in their own world in front of the screen. Some of them we had to physically march out of the premises after hours of just communing with that space in the virtuality. So I understood quite early that it's incredibly powerful and it's all in our heads, and we just need a tool to pass that magic door. And it was lucky because we were very close to UCL, and UCL had a big virtual reality lab. Never made any money, never really concluded with anything practical, but people had a lot of fun. And we explored and moved to the point where I then, after we sold the business, I moved to Topshop and started the first e-commerce for Topshop. And again, that was the first challenge where Topshop never had to deal with the concept of being virtual. And people just refused to conceptualize it, that a brand can have an instance in virtuality. It was a long journey before they let us actually do that. So the beginning of the sort of passing from physical to real for retail was very painful. And I still remember the drama about how can we control the cyberspace? It's impossible. And now look at them. They were the first brand in UK a year and a half ago, where the virtual reality streamed from Tate Modern with a catwalk with Kate Mosses and Caras and whoever showed up, was streamed to the Topshop in Oxford Street. The girls could watch and participate in the catwalk from Oxford Street, and they loved it. So, okay, the concept of sitting there with a plastic thing on your head is not necessarily something to write home about, but you know, it was totally for the purpose it needed to be there, for the purpose of joining with the catwalk, for the purpose of getting the excitement. They absolutely bought it. It was done a little bit oddly because they wanted maximum results, so they basically put the chairs outside in the window, so the girls were watching the catwalk, were actually sitting on high stools in the window. Kind of looked a bit like Amsterdam, but never mind. so we didn't quite get that one right, but it was enormous fun, enormous, and it was just amazing to see how completely immediately they got it. And the fact that you can share that experience in real time was really the kicker. So however poor that camera was at that time, that was enough. Sometimes it's just the psychological clue to really connect. So that was only 18 months ago. Since then, they've done quite a lot. This is basically telepresence. So basically linking with people somewhere else, but sharing their experience in 360. You might have a view on it, but Dior didn't want to wait long, and they came up with Dior way of doing it. So basically, they unpicked this plastic horrible thing and gave it to a very, very amazing, talented designer who just unpicked it completely, started again. The whole project was €250,000. We were watching with amazement. We actually only got the tail end of it, but the idea was to bring it into the store. So that was in Selfridges. So the movie was filming backstage of catwalk and of models being made up and that whole sort of hustle and bustle. You guys won't understand it, but it's really fun. so that was sort of really participating with that creation of what comes on the catwalk. That was the backstage, and everybody wants to be backstage. So we filmed backstage, and Dior then put this beautiful Dior headset, which was just beautiful to touch. It was 3D printed, but the material was very Dior. You could see it was Dior. You could say that it was a complete waste of time because the result was exactly the same. But that was Dior. And they plunked it in Selfridges with a little kind of holder barrier. So when you were walking around, that you wouldn't fall over. So the virtual in a physical space, so enhancing the experience in the shop, but giving you the concept of what it is like to be behind the stage with these amazing fingers. Very similar heel figure, they did a catwalk, which then they allowed visitors in the store to experience in the store. That wasn't quite as good as Dior in terms of the execution, but it was the same concept, so giving people the chance to actually absorb and participate. Slightly different direction is now with Kidstone. They were bought by a Japanese company, which has got more money than sense. So they decided that, who needs the stores anyway? Let's just skip that bit, that's passé, and created Kidstone completely in virtual space. You can walk around, you can sort of think like you're touching things, although obviously the gesture stuff is not happening yet. But that's kind of moving the concept. So forget the store, just no store, and you doing everything in the virtual store. This is halfway through testing. I think there's a lot of things missing, which we can discuss in terms of the interface. But it's that direction of travel because the stores are getting very expensive. The amount of people who come to the store is so few that to support it is just pointless. So have a good look at the Oxford Street and Broad Street because then I'm going to be long. We are moving there, and whether we like it or not, that's what's happening. The third type of experiences is how to get your husband to help you to design your dream kitchen. Normally you can't drag your people kicking or screaming into John Lewis to select tiles. The excitement of picking the tap is just not there. So somebody came up with a really cracking idea of making the virtual walkthrough design environment where you pick up the surfaces and the textures and enjoy it. But the way it's done is amazing because it just goes plonk, flap, and everything you do has got this immediate feedback. And you go, oh, maybe I can try that again. So they got people who have zero interest in interior design to actually participate in the process of designing a kitchen. I have seen it, it works. So this is slightly different. This is like trying to get people to really pick and choose from set of menus, but be in your kitchen, be in the space that you will design for.
Oh, it is in your own kitchen.
You can, yes, they will come and they will.
Kitchen.
Well, the future kitchen, or your crappy carrot kitchen in the future.
Now, of course, if the tap dispensed beer, then you wouldn't have the problem.
Oh, they missed that.
Isn't it a better idea not to consult your husband?
Sorry.
Better to inform rather than...
Well, depends who's paying. I think the idea is that if he participates in design, he might actually get to cook there. But yeah, that might be pushing it.
I think he has to feel he's been consulted.
One of the big winners of the Customer Experience Awards, we sort of moved from UX to CX. So it was UX all the way through my PhD and everybody else's PhD, and now it's CX. So we're combining the UX with the actual physical looking after the customer in store. And Thomas Cook is actually quite good at it. Designed about 6 months ago a walk through a villa in the Red Sea resorts and walk through all the places that they were selling with the idea that you try before you buy. The only problem was that shortly after the plane has been shot and nobody was going nowhere near the place, so now it's try instead of buying. So I think they were thinking right, because obviously if you're going to spend quite a lot of money, it wouldn't be a bad thing to spend a couple of minutes with helmet on your head trying to see, is it okay for my little kids? Is it okay for my grandma who's coming? Can I just see little bits of it that may not be relevant to the agent, but might be relevant to me? So it allows to explore the virtual environment a little bit more depth. And it was a good example. I think now, since nobody's going to Red Sea, you can just as well go to Blue Water and test it out. And so the final bit of it is the training. I was one of the early investors in VirtuX only, and not a good idea, as Simon will explain later. But this was developed for army training. So the idea was that instead of kind of trying to explain to people what does it mean to have to duck when somebody's shooting at you, you can actually do the ducking in real environments. So that's a treadmill. He's sitting on the treadmill, which is multi-directional. And there is a hold over the body to ensure that the physical safety is maintained. And you basically can go for experience of a fight, combat training, and move around. You get a little special pair of shoes. They're very sweet. They can be like, when you go bowling, you get a special shoes. Well, there you go, special shoes as well. So this sort of looks like that. It's meant to be coming out any minute now by probably early January. And the idea was that this would be also used for people who sit in front of the games for a little bit longer than they should. So those of you who have fat teenage boys will know all about it. So this should be encouraged by the parents to keep gaming but get fit. So keep doing all the good things, but in a physical environment.
Oh, your girls, exactly.
Slight hiccup with that, and they did a lot of very, very interesting stuff. That you can do a guided walk through South Park, which is really nice, and guided walk through different cities. It's all amazing. But the problem is that what happens between the body and the actual adjustment to the eye is not there yet. So the problem is that we will show you during the demos, but what you see a prolonged period of time, it doesn't quite fit with the body, so you get seasick. And none of the big companies at the moment are going anywhere near that. So we have great kits, but we don't have the content. And I think that's the way it's going to be for a little while longer. So most of the developments are about being still and looking at something which is like a cockpit. So you have a fixed frame and just virtual things happen within quite a small area. So it looked good,
Can
but
some users do it? Are some users more successful than other users?
well,
Or is
some
there a
people like the
behavioural-
sort of hardcore gamer can last a fraction longer.
Well, that's not actually. Well, I mean, you can learn it a little bit, but it's also people have a predisposition to it. And regardless of whether you have a predisposition to it or not, like if it's not well built, like everybody's done after about 30 or 40 minutes. So I mean, that is some scope, but it's not like something.
Right, so considering the average gamer would be sitting on a game by 3 hours, then 40 minutes not quite there, but to be honest, for the advertising purposes, it's fine. Because if you are Thomas Cook, or if you are Dior, or if you are Topshop, you don't really need people to hang out there for hours on end. In and out, just 10 minutes, 5 minutes is fine. To be honest, the Dior thing was about 2 minutes, absolutely fine. So for those purposes, for those sectors, it's pretty sufficient. Yeah, there is a little bit of work now trying to see if gesture control will help. So if you see your fingers, your hands within the virtual reality, will it get it easier for your eye to adjust? So Pebble's just been bought by Facebook for a lot of money, and they have a solution, but we don't know yet what it means. And one that I think is probably the closest to what we want to do is the immersive sports watching. So you're basically watching your favorite game, sitting wherever you want to sit, in the goal, next to the goal, next to Mourinho swearing. You can probably even have him spitting on you if you really want to. So this whole immersive stuff is definitely there, and that's here. But again, how long? Can you last? Again, probably not. So this is more of a step. And just to finish off, I've got an amazing experience. We just spent two days on a hackathon helping out the logistics and systems for the refugees camps, particularly women and girls. And somebody was telling me the story about this project. So Google has spent a lot of money supporting virtual journalism. So basically they gave journalists very expensive cameras. Actually, one of them just came out today also, which cost $60,000, but it's manageable and you can go in the field with it to tell the story of a refugee journey. And again, that story is probably 3-4 minutes, but it would be much more valuable and much more immersive to people than any storytelling you can achieve through 3D. So I think that probably has legs, and Google put $1 million to put cardboard on the cover of New York Times. So they're actually putting the money behind the initiative. So if anybody here into virtual journalists, we're sort of there. Yeah, that's what the Uzo looks like. So this is all sort of different directions. Impact on work, enormous. Because if you look, everything from what we started from the retail, if you don't have to go to the shop, you don't need the shop. There's about 3 million people in UK who work in the shops still. And this is how we get our experience. This is how we get socialized. This is how I got my first job, Saturday job in the shop, which is why I still love it. And there isn't any good way we have to shovel people through from schools where they have no idea about the real world into the work environment. Saturday day in the shop kind of does it. So if we lose it, I'm not entirely sure how we're going to manage that, because that's actually a big loss. And never mind the 3 million people who work in the shops at the moment, who are not exactly going to be programmers, are they? So the whole transition is rapid. It's probably 3-4 years away. It's happening at the moment. All the big companies are shrinking in terms of their footfall. So this is a lot of people to take care of. And this is not on anybody's list at the moment. Nobody is really looking at that. So that's one, and obviously the impact on travel as well. Will people want to still travel if they can get fully immersive experience? It's a lot of hassle to travel. It's airport, security, blah, blah, blah. It's not that much fun. The fun is when you actually get there, but if you can do the get there, particularly if you could have multi-team environment, if you can see your family, your friends within your virtual team, I can think about a few people who do we want to go anywhere. So that sort of opens up a very different avenue in terms of travel. Obviously opens travel to people who can't travel. So people who are claustrophobic, who are disabled, who have 2 small kids, and there's a million reasons why a lot of people can't travel. So it's a good thing, but obviously there are impacts. So basically if you take every of these pieces, it will have an impact. And we don't have anybody on it. Nobody sits with a list thinking through what will happen here, as nobody has sat with a list what happened in 1994 when we opened Siberia. The impact is enormous, but at that time we were absolutely unaware that we just opened up the door to the biggest surveillance industry in the world, up in Chester, wherever Gloucester, where they are. So, these are kind of unintended consequences, but there is nobody on it. And technical communities were the only people who at least understand what's going on, but they're not necessarily seeing themselves as responsible for any of this. We just sort of develop stuff, and then stuff happens to stuff. So we kind of trying to campaign about a little bit more foresight. And I would never sign up with the field which says, don't develop, stop it now. You know, we're automating people out of work, because we don't have the answer, and a lot of that will be good. And I wouldn't trust politicians to make those decisions. I wouldn't trust scientists to make those decisions. I wouldn't actually trust anybody. So in some way, my view is, you know, let it rip and regulate when it goes wrong. But that's me. You know, I've seen good things coming out of technology, and I'm a believer. But I also think we need to, the makers have to be a bit more thinkers as well. At the moment, we're just making. You know, you see lots of clubs, makers clubs. Shenzhen is a maker city. Never seen thinkers city. And that's the bit which is missing.
How do you incentivize somebody to, you know, take a step back and say, is this the right thing? For me personally, I totally agree with you. I think it's, you know, it's hard enough just trying to get from A to B to C, let alone trying to take a step back and saying, is this the right idea?
Well, I think that's the discussion.
We buy the beer online, we put it in the room.
So could you provide a scenario for kind of a more typical workspace, for example? Could you try and extrapolate for maybe our worldview, and apologies for anyone who's in retail, or the current applications? How can you see that affecting?
Well, you know, those are current applications. This retail stuff has happened, you know, sort of started 2 years ago, and, you know, every luxury retailer has got a virtual reality project. Every generally large retailer have got something cooking. So, you know, the ecology is happening, and the stuff is not even for sale yet, you know, so this is how quick it's happening.
So thinking about that, you know, that landscape out there, how might that ecosystem change in the future?
Well, you know, this I think is just gonna go. What is the point of all this?
So you're talking about a virtual office space, basically.
Yeah. Why would you want to be here? Why would you want to look like a, you know, drone sitting in a cell? I mean, really, that's not humans are good for. You want to be somewhere green and doing work remotely or in a nice green space in the middle of Scotland. This is a mistake.
Work remotely now too, can't we?
Well, are we? There's a lot of people here. What are they doing here? God knows.
Yeah, but sitting in a cell is what you are when you've got one of those things on. And I think the technology is absolutely wonderful.
I'm not recommending that at all. But if we get to the point where we can have this on our heads somehow, maybe by the time we have chip in your brain, but with other people.
That's yeah. Is it
people
to be an individual and not a communal experience?
You know, humans always get to communal experience. Everything we start to always ends up with doing that with other people. So at the moment we just learn how to see our hands in virtual reality. From there to seeing others, it's
already happened.
It's already happened.
Yeah, there's already multiplayer things you can do.
Right.
But within the device.
Yeah,
so you're still trapped in the device.
Well, I mean, there are applications, mostly games at the moment, because that's what's pushing it, where multiple people will have on a headset and they'll be represented in a virtual space. Differently, but still represented.
So these are great questions and conversation. We have a way of dealing with this that isn't one person speaking at a time and everybody else being quiet. Thank you. That's exactly this is exactly the conversation I wanted us to have. So,
shall we regroup?
Big thank you to Eva. And what I'd like us to do is form a circle of chairs towards the end of that end of the room. We might rotate this table so that we can do that better.
Okay, and whoever wants to see the demo line up with Simon,
we'll fit the demo in what we do.
Yeah, it's one to one, so it's just
So
just
move it. The best thing to do is rotate it on its centre.
What do you think we need? We could just space that.
We're getting there.
We have.
We don't have a way
You just
to
rotate
do
it 30 degrees with its
It'll
centre
give us a
staying the
little
same.
bit more.
It just works.
Yeah.
And it does no damage. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've done it before.
Yeah, we've done it about there, and then
That's great.
form the circle.
Thank
down.
you. Brilliant. Thank you.
It eliminates the dead